he wanted to build a car, as he said, to kick their ass on the street, too. So this is Carroll Shelby's answer to Ferrari. There were rumors it was painted Ferrari red, that was his sort of to Ferrari.
Imagine opening a forgotten garage once owned by one of the greatest names in automotive history, expecting to find old tools, dusty parts, and a few well-known classics. But instead, hidden beneath decades of mystery, sits a car that experts believed had been destroyed forever. Not stolen, not tucked away in a private museum, officially gone. Yet somehow, against every expectation, it survived. And when investigators finally uncovered the truth, it rewrote a chapter of Carroll Shelby history that collectors thought was already finished. For years, rumors swirled through the classic car community. Some claimed Shelby had secretly built experimental Mustangs that never reached production. Others insisted those prototypes had all been crushed once their work was complete. The evidence pointed in every direction except the truth. What nobody realized was that the answer wasn't hidden behind a locked warehouse door or buried inside a billionaire's collection. It had been sitting in plain sight, disguised as an ordinary old Mustang, waiting for someone to ask the right question. To understand why this discovery shocked the automotive world, you first have to understand the man behind it. Carroll Shelby wasn't born into luxury or surrounded by elite engineers. He grew up in Texas with a love for speed and an instinct for pushing machines beyond their limits. Racing wasn't just a hobby for him, it became an obsession. While many drivers relied on raw courage alone, Shelby possessed an unusual ability to feel what a car needed. He could sense where it was weak, imagine how it could be stronger, and then make it happen. That gift carried him all the way to international racing glory. In 1959, Shelby captured one of motorsport's greatest achievements by winning the legendary 24 Hours of Le Mans alongside Roy Salvadori. For most drivers, that would have been the defining moment of a lifetime. But Shelby's greatest victories were still ahead. A serious heart condition forced him away from professional racing earlier than anyone expected. Most people would have accepted retirement. Shelby refused. If he could no longer defeat Europe's finest behind the wheel, he would build machines capable of doing it for him. That decision changed American performance forever. Shelby saw opportunity where others saw limitations. He looked at the lightweight British AC Ace and imagined pairing its nimble chassis with a roaring American V8. The result became the Shelby Cobra, a car so brutally fast it embarrassed competitors that cost far more to build. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't refined. It was raw power wrapped inside a lightweight body, and it instantly became a legend. Soon, Detroit came calling. During the mid-1960s, Ford desperately wanted to defeat Ferrari at Le Mans. Billions in today's money were being poured into racing, yet success remained frustratingly out of reach. The GT40 project had potential, but it lacked the aggressive racing mindset Shelby brought to every challenge. When Shelby American took control, everything changed. The GT40 evolved from an ambitious engineering project into one of the most feared race cars in history. Ford finally defeated Ferrari at Le Mans in 1966 before repeating the achievement year after year. Shelby's reputation skyrocketed. He wasn't simply building cars anymore. He had become the man manufacturers trusted whenever they wanted impossible goals turned into reality. At the same time, another opportunity arrived. Ford's Mustang was already selling incredibly well, but executives believed it could become something much more exciting. Lee Iacocca understood how to market the Mustang. Carroll Shelby understood how to transform it into a genuine performance machine. The Shelby GT350 arrived first. Then came the mighty GT500. These weren't ordinary Mustangs wearing fancy badges. Shelby reworked engines, suspension, cooling systems, styling, and countless other details until the cars felt completely different from their factory counterparts. They became symbols of American muscle at its absolute peak. Yet as famous as those production cars became, Shelby's most fascinating creations were never sold to the public. Hidden behind the scenes were experimental vehicles built for testing, development, and pure imagination. These prototypes weren't intended for collectors. They weren't built to sit inside museums. They existed to answer one simple question. How far can we push the Mustang? Inside Shelby American's workshops, engineers constantly experimented with bigger engines, improved handling, new suspension systems, advanced braking technology, fresh body designs, and radical styling concepts. Some ideas succeeded, others failed spectacularly. Either way, the prototype cars served their purpose before quietly disappearing. At least that was the assumption. Back then, development cars rarely enjoyed glamorous retirements. Once testing finished, manufacturers often dismantled or crushed them. There were practical reasons. Companies wanted to eliminate liability, prevent competitors from studying experimental technology, and avoid storing obsolete vehicles. Nobody imagined these prototypes would someday become priceless pieces of history. That belief explains why one particular Shelby became one of the greatest automotive mysteries ever recorded. Its nickname was Little Red. Unlike nearly every Shelby Mustang enthusiasts recognize, Little Red wasn't a fastback. It was a notchback coupe, making it unusual from the very beginning. Only two experimental Shelby notchbacks ever gained legendary status: the Green Hornet and Little Red. Even among Shelby experts, Little Red stood apart. It served as a rolling laboratory where engineers tested performance upgrades, styling concepts, and mechanical innovations that might eventually shape future Mustangs. Big block performance ideas, supercharging experiments, and design cues connected to later California Special Mustangs all traced back to this single prototype. It wasn't simply another rare Shelby. It represented Shelby's imagination before accountants, production schedules, and corporate approvals forced compromises. Then, it vanished. Photographs proved the car existed. Engineering records referenced it. Former employees remembered working on it. Collectors searched endlessly. Yet the car itself simply disappeared. Year after year, enthusiasts accepted the same explanation. Like countless prototypes before it, Little Red must have been crushed after testing ended. The mystery seemed solved, except something didn't quite fit. If Shelby's other famous experimental car, the Green Hornet, had somehow survived, was it really impossible that Little Red had escaped destruction too? That question refused to disappear. Eventually, one man became determined to answer it. Craig Jackson, chairman and CEO of Barrett-Jackson, already owned the Green Hornet. During its restoration, conversations frequently turned toward the missing Little Red. Restoration specialist Jason Billups became increasingly convinced that everyone had been searching the wrong way. For decades, researchers chased Shelby serial numbers. Every trail ended in frustration. No records, no ownership history, no surviving vehicle. Most investigators concluded the search itself was impossible. Billups reached a completely different conclusion. What if Little Red had been hiding under another identity? That single thought changed everything. Every Shelby originally began life as a Ford Mustang before receiving Shelby modifications. That meant each vehicle possessed two separate identities: its Shelby serial number and its original Ford vehicle identification number. Collectors had spent decades searching only one of them. The Shelby records led nowhere. But the Ford VIN, that trail was still alive. One forgotten number suddenly reopened an investigation that everyone believed had ended decades earlier. Piece by piece, researchers followed registration documents, ownership records, and scattered paperwork stretching back across generations. Every clue pointed toward one unexpected destination: Texas. The search team realized they weren't chasing a legend anymore. They were chasing a real car. And somewhere in rural Texas, hidden among ordinary vehicles and forgotten history, something extraordinary was waiting to be found. When the search team finally arrived in rural Texas, they weren't expecting a perfectly preserved Shelby hidden beneath silk covers inside a climate-controlled garage. Reality was far less glamorous and far more remarkable. Sitting among old vehicles was what looked like nothing more than a worn-out Mustang shell. The engine was gone. The transmission had long since disappeared. Several body panels were missing, and years of neglect had left the car weathered beyond recognition. To almost anyone else, it appeared destined for the scrapyard. But experienced eyes noticed details others would never see. The body style matched. Certain structural features lined up perfectly. And most importantly, the Ford VIN matched the records. After decades of speculation, the impossible had happened. Little Red had been found. The discovery stunned even veteran Shelby historians. For years, countless experts had confidently stated that the prototype no longer existed. Entire books repeated the assumption that it had been destroyed. Yet there it was, surviving not because someone carefully preserved it, but because history had simply forgotten what it truly was. Its survival almost felt accidental. Unlike famous production Shelby Mustangs that collectors protected from the beginning, Little Red slipped through the cracks. Ownership changed over the years. Parts disappeared. Documentation became scattered. Without its Shelby identity attached, it slowly transformed into what appeared to be just another aging Mustang. Ironically, that misunderstanding may have saved it. Had someone recognized its importance decades earlier, the story might have unfolded very differently. Instead, the prototype quietly endured while generations assumed it no longer existed. Authentication became the next challenge. Finding an old Mustang wasn't enough. Researchers needed undeniable proof. Craig Jackson, restoration expert Jason Billups, and renowned Mustang historian Kevin Marty carefully examined every surviving detail. They compared factory documentation, engineering records, historical photographs, production data, and the vehicle itself. One clue supported another. Every answer pointed toward the same conclusion. This wasn't simply an old Mustang. It was the long-lost Shelby GT500 EXP prototype known worldwide as Little Red. The mystery was finally over. Yet the discovery raised an even bigger question. Why did this forgotten prototype matter so much? The answer reaches far beyond rarity. Production cars show the world what manufacturers decide to sell. Prototype cars reveal what engineers dreamed about before compromise entered the conversation. Little Red represented Shelby's creative process in its purest form. Engineers experimented with big block performance upgrades, possible supercharging concepts, and styling changes that would later influence future Mustangs. The prototype wasn't built merely to impress buyers. It existed to explore possibilities. Many of those ideas arrived years ahead of their time. Its sister prototype, the Green Hornet, pushed boundaries even further. That car tested electronic fuel injection when carburetors still ruled American performance. It experimented with four-wheel disc brakes before they became common. It even featured independent rear suspension decades before Ford introduced similar technology on modern Mustangs. At the time, many of these ideas seemed too expensive or too complicated for production. Today, they look remarkably forward-thinking. Little Red carried that same experimental spirit. Instead of simply making Mustangs faster, Shelby's team constantly searched for entirely new directions. Every prototype became a rolling laboratory where impossible ideas received a chance to prove themselves. That explains why collectors view Little Red as far more than another rare classic. It offers a direct window into Carroll Shelby's imagination. One fascinating aspect of the discovery involved its connection to another legendary Mustang. Automotive historians eventually confirmed that Little Red influenced the styling of the 1968 Mustang California Special. Millions of enthusiasts admired the California Special for decades without realizing part of its design DNA came from a prototype everyone believed had vanished forever. It's almost like discovering the missing first draft of a famous novel. The finished version had always been there. Only now could people see where the inspiration truly began. The more researchers uncovered, the clearer one fact became. Carroll Shelby's greatest secret wasn't hidden inside one mysterious garage. It was hidden inside his way of thinking. Shelby constantly challenged conventional engineering. He wasn't interested in building safe, predictable cars. He wanted machines that surprised people, frightened competitors, and pushed performance further than anyone believed possible. Working alongside Ford created both incredible opportunities and constant tension. Corporate executives preferred proven formulas. Shelby preferred experimentation. Ford needed reliability. Shelby chased innovation. That push-and-pull relationship produced some of the greatest American performance cars ever built. Little Red became physical proof of that creative battle. It represented the stage before committees approved budgets, before marketing departments chose colors, and before production limitations simplified ambitious ideas. In many ways, it captured Shelby at his most authentic. Once the excitement of the discovery settled, another difficult decision emerged. What should happen next? Some preservation experts argued the prototype should remain exactly as it had been found. Every scratch, every missing component, and every sign of age represented 50 years of survival. Restoring it too aggressively might erase the very history that made the discovery meaningful. Others disagreed completely. Carroll Shelby never built cars to become dusty museum exhibits. He built them to drive, to accelerate, to roar, to leave tire marks behind. Supporters of restoration believed the greatest tribute would be returning Little Red to the condition Shelby intended, allowing future generations to experience the car as it once existed. Neither choice was easy. Ultimately, Craig Jackson and the restoration team chose the challenging path of carefully bringing Little Red back to life while documenting every stage of the process. Unlike restoring an ordinary production Mustang, this project had no instruction manual. Prototype cars evolve constantly during testing. Parts change. Components are replaced. Ideas appear and disappear. Determining which version represented the correct Little Red required years of research. Every bolt mattered. Every measurement mattered. Every photograph became valuable evidence. After countless hours of painstaking restoration, the moment enthusiasts had dreamed about finally arrived. In January 2020, Barrett Jackson unveiled Little Red to the public in Scottsdale, Arizona. For the first time in history, both legendary Shelby notchback prototypes stood together once again. Little Red and the Green Hornet. Collectors who had spent decades reading about these mythical cars could finally see them with their own eyes. The reveal wasn't simply another classic car debut. Corrected automotive history. What had once been dismissed as another lost prototype was now standing proudly before thousands of enthusiasts. The discovery also transformed how collectors approached missing vehicles. For years, conventional wisdom suggested that if documentation claimed a prototype had been destroyed, the case was closed. Little Red proved otherwise. Sometimes the paperwork is wrong. Sometimes assumptions survive longer than facts. And sometimes history only changes because someone decides to ask a different question. Instead of accepting old conclusions, researchers challenged them. Instead of following familiar records, they searched overlooked ones. Instead of trusting rumors, they trusted evidence. That persistence uncovered one of the greatest lost Shelby cars ever found. Today, Little Red represents much more than financial value. Yes, it's extraordinarily rare. Yes, it's historically significant, but its greatest importance lies in what it teaches. Automotive history is never completely finished. Somewhere, forgotten documents still wait inside filing cabinets. Old photographs remain tucked away in family albums. Abandoned workshops may still contain overlooked treasures. And perhaps, hidden beneath decades of dust, another legendary prototype is quietly waiting for someone to recognize a number everyone else ignored. Carroll Shelby spent his life proving that impossible ideas could become reality with enough determination and imagination. Decades after his greatest achievements, Little Red delivered one final lesson. Sometimes the greatest discoveries aren't created by building something new. Sometimes they're made by refusing to believe that an incredible piece of history is truly gone. And perhaps that's the most fitting ending imaginable for Carroll Shelby's legacy. A man whose greatest creations were never limited by what others believed was possible.